What kind of man makes a promise he isn't sure he can keep? That question hit Samuel Crawford the moment he saw the stagecoach roll toward his ranch through the sharp February wind. Samuel stood on his porch with his pocket watch open in his palm. The hands pointed to 6:47. The stagecoach was late, but the cold Montana wind wasn't. It swept across the land like a hard truth. Snow clung to the frozen ground in dull gray patches. Behind him stood his 2-story ranch house, strong on the outside but hollow on the inside. Every room echoed when he walked. It had been like that for 3 lonely years since Sarah died. He had cooked for one, talked to horses more than people, sat alone at the breakfast table so often he forgot what another voice sounded like across it. The mail-order arrangement had seemed simple. A woman needed security. He needed company. No courtship, no fears. Just 2 people trying to live through winter in different ways. But nothing was simple when the past still lived in your chest. Dust rose on the horizon, and Samuel straightened his coat. His hand brushed Sarah's ring in his vest pocket. He didn't wear it anymore, but he couldn't bury it either. The stagecoach stopped in a spray of frozen mud. The driver grinned down with something sharp in his eyes. "Your package, Crawford." A woman stepped down slowly. She wore a long black dress and a heavy veil. Her steps were careful, almost practiced, like someone who expected to be judged before she even spoke. Samuel walked forward, rehearsed greetings ready on his tongue. But when she lifted her head and spoke, his words vanished. "Mr. Crawford," she said, steady and polite. "I'm Clara Bennett." She lifted the veil. The right side of her face was shaped by old fire. Burn scars ran from her temple down to her jaw, pulling the skin tight, changing the shape of her smile and eye. The left side was untouched, gentle, almost beautiful. The contrast struck him so hard he froze where he stood. Clara saw everything in his face in a single breath. She had likely seen it many times in many towns. Her shoulders tightened, her chin lifted. "The agency didn't tell you," she said quietly. "I understand. If the contract is void, I can take the next stage east." Samuel couldn't speak. He had pictured someone plain, someone practical, someone ordinary. Instead, she was a woman who had survived something terrible and still stood straight. He heard Sarah's voice in his mind, soft but firm. "Do the right thing, Samuel. Be better than your fear." "The agreement stands," he said at last, his voice rough. "Welcome to Crawford Ranch, Miss Bennett." Clara's eyes widened for a moment. Surprise, maybe disbelief. She nodded once. The driver snorted, spat tobacco juice into the snow. "Good luck, Crawford. You'll need it." Samuel ignored him, picked up Clara's small trunk, and watched her walk toward the porch. She moved with quiet strength, back straight even though exhaustion clung to her steps. When she crossed his threshold, Samuel realized he had just made a choice he didn't fully understand. Inside, Clara moved through the house as if inspecting inventory. Dust on shelves, torn curtains, cold stove, a kitchen with nothing fresh in sight. She didn't ask him anything. She simply placed her bag down and began cleaning. "You don't have to," Samuel started. "Where do you keep the cleaning rags?" she asked, eyes on the table. "Under the basin," he said. But she found them before he finished speaking. She worked like someone who had worked for years because she had no other choice. Samuel shifted awkwardly, unsure if he should help or stand out of the way. "I'll show you the bedrooms," he offered. "You should take the—" "I'll take the maid's room," Clara said, nodding toward the small room off the kitchen. "That's not necessary," Samuel said. "You should have the main." "Mr. Crawford." She looked at him directly. Her scar caught the lamplight. "I cook. I clean. I mend. Nothing more is expected or offered. The small room is enough." Her words were firm, not rude, just walls built from years of disappointment. Samuel opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came. She turned back to wiping the table, and he retreated to the barn like a man unsure of his own home. Dinner was plain salt pork and beans. Clara cooked quietly, efficiently. They sat across from each other, the scrape of cutlery too loud in the still kitchen. "How long have you been alone here?" Clara asked. 3 years, he said. "My wife died. Childbirth. "I'm sorry," she replied softly. "It was God's will." He didn't really believe that anymore, but the words were automatic. She nodded, said nothing more. Pain recognized pain. After supper, Clara washed the dishes with calm focus. Samuel escaped outside, checked horses that didn't need checking, tried to settle the storm inside his chest. When he returned, her small door was closed. A faint glow came from under it. He lay in his own bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds of a stranger settling into his home. He knew nothing about her except her scars and her silence. "What have I done?" he wondered. In her tiny room, Clara stood by the window. She touched her scar out of habit. The world had looked at her with curiosity, fear, pity, but rarely kindness. She had no illusions about how long this might last. "1 week," she whispered. "If he sends me back, I'll go west, somewhere new." She'd survive. She always survived. The next morning they rode to town for supplies. Clara wore her veil again. She sat, stiff as a fence post, hands folded tightly in her lap. When the buildings of Bitterroot came into view, her shoulders tightened. A woman preparing for battle. Inside the general store, whispers started the moment they walked in. Mrs. Hartwell, the preacher's wife, greeted them with a bright, fake smile. "Bless you both," she said loudly. "Such Christian charity from you, Mr. Crawford." Clara steadied herself. Samuel's jaw flexed. And then Marcus Dalton stepped in their path outside the store. Tall, mean-eyed, smug. "Heard you bought a mail-order bride, Crawford," he said. Didn't know they were giving discounts on damaged goods. Clara didn't flinch. She picked up a sack of flour and carried it to the wagon herself while Samuel stood frozen between anger and shock. He said nothing. Dalton's laughter followed them down the street. On the long ride home, Samuel gripped the reins hard. Clara stared straight ahead. "You don't owe me defense," she said quietly. "Maybe I owe myself one," he answered. For the first time, she looked at him. Something shifted in her eyes. The smallest opening. That night, Samuel sat at the table, staring at the unsigned marriage license. Sending her back would be simple. Signing it would be a promise. He picked up the pen and signed. Morning light crept across the kitchen table where the signed marriage license rested. Samuel stared at it, the ink dry and final. He had made his choice, but he didn't know how to live with it yet. When Clara stepped out of her small room, wrapped in a simple shawl, she looked from the paper to Samuel. "Why now?" she asked. "Because I made a promise," he said, "and I keep my promises." Her breath caught. She picked up the pen. Her hand trembled as she signed her new name beside his. Clara Bennett Crawford. When she set the pen down, something in the room shifted. The air felt tighter, but also warmer, like something had begun. Weeks passed. March arrived with mud and melting snow across Montana. Clara's presence grew quietly in every corner of the house. She washed curtains until they looked new, scrubbed floors until they shined, found forgotten fabric in the attic and sewed bright curtains for the windows. The kitchen began to smell like bread instead of dust. Samuel found himself listening for her steps, her soft humming, the rustle of her skirts. Every morning he walked into a home that felt a little less empty. One morning he found his old winter coat laid across the table. The torn sleeve had been mended with tiny, perfect stitches, stronger than before. He touched the seams, surprised. "My mother used to stitch like this," he said. Clara looked up from kneading dough. "Mine too." It was a small thing, but it mattered. Then the blizzard came. A late March storm rolled over the valley, thick and angry, trapping them inside the house for 3 full days. The wind howled against the windows. Snow piled past the porch rail. The world outside disappeared in white. Inside, everything changed. The first day, they stayed careful. Clara cooked. Samuel brought in firewood. Their conversations stayed safe and short. But on the second day, the quiet softened. They sat by the fire, and Samuel taught Clara how to play checkers. She was terrible. She apologized after every move. He laughed. A real laugh he hadn't heard from himself in years. "You're letting me win," she said. "I'm trying," he said. "You're just that bad." She threw a checker at him. He caught it, grinning. By the third day, something fragile had formed between them. Clara read aloud from Sarah's old books. Poetry. Samuel listened to her soft voice more than the words. He watched the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her face softened when she forgot to guard herself. That evening she fell asleep in the rocking chair beside the fire, book open in her lap. Samuel stood over her, his heart tight. Asleep, Clara looked peaceful. Young. The scars on her face looked like part of her, not all of her. He shouldn't touch her. They kept careful boundaries. But he lifted her anyway. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her to her room and laid her gently on the bed. She murmured something but didn't wake. He stepped back, hands shaking. He was falling, and it terrified him. Clara woke the next morning in her bed, confused. She touched her temple where his hand must have rested. Her heart thudded painfully. Something had changed, and she didn't know if she was ready for it. Outside, spring pushed through the last of winter. Grass brightened. The sky cleared. Life returned to the land. And slowly, it returned to the house. Samuel and Clara planted a garden together. They knelt side by side in the soil. Their hands brushed once, and both paused. Clara hummed while she worked, a soft tune from her childhood. When Samuel stopped digging to listen, she flushed. "Sorry." "Don't be," he said. "Please don't be." Their eyes met, and something warm uncoiled between them. Saturday, Samuel rode to town alone and returned with a brown-wrapped package. He set it on the table, nervous. "For you?" Clara unwrapped it slowly. Inside was soft blue calico fabric, new, beautiful, something she would never have bought for herself. Her eyes filled. "Samuel, I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," he said. "You deserve nice things." She touched the fabric gently, as if afraid it might vanish. "Thank you." That evening, she stayed up late by lamplight, cutting pieces to sew a new dress. Samuel sat nearby, pretending to read, but mostly watching her hands move with quiet grace. The house felt warm in a new way. Full. Alive. At sunset, they sat outside together. Clara sewing. Samuel carving a piece of wood. The sky glowed orange and purple. Without thinking, Clara leaned lightly against his shoulder. Samuel froze, afraid to move. Her warmth seeped through his shirt. He turned slightly toward her. His hand lifted. Slow, careful. He touched the scarred side of her face with the gentlest brush of his thumb. Clara's breath caught. She didn't flinch. Her eyes searched his, full of hope and fear. He leaned in. Then he stopped. A ghost rose between them. Sarah's memory. His doubt. His fear of loving again. Just one breath of hesitation. Just one heartbeat. Clara felt it like a blade. She pulled back, stood quickly. "It's late. Good night, Samuel." It was the first time she used his name. It sounded like goodbye. She went inside, closed her door, locked it. Samuel stayed on the porch, head in his hands, the night cold around him. He hated himself for letting fear win. Inside, Clara pressed her face into a pillow to hide her sobs. The moment had been perfect, and she had watched it crumble. The next morning, they moved like strangers again, polite, careful, breaking quietly. The blue fabric sat untouched on her table. The distance lasted until late April, and then everything fell apart. Monday morning arrived with a sharp wind over the ranch, but inside the house, everything felt colder. Clara stood by the door with her small trunk packed. Samuel walked in from the pasture, dust on his coat, exhaustion in his eyes. He froze when he saw her. "What are you doing?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Do you regret it, marrying me?" "Clara," he dragged a hand down his face. "It's complicated." The words fell like stones. She swallowed hard. "I'll make it simple," she said. "I'll leave." "Maybe," Samuel whispered, Maybe that's best. He didn't mean her. He meant his fear, but exhaustion twisted the words. Clara heard only rejection. She closed her trunk. I'll be gone by morning. Samuel opened his mouth, but nothing came. Fear kept him silent. Pride kept him still. Clara walked past him. The house felt like it was collapsing in slow motion. He retreated to the barn. He stayed there until the lantern burned low. At dawn, Clara walked down the long dirt road toward Bitterroot, her trunk over her shoulder. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Samuel watched her from the window until she became a small shadow against the horizon. Then, nothing at all. When he found the blue fabric she had left behind folded neatly on the table, there was a note beneath it. Thank you for trying to be kind. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. He crushed the note in his fist. His chest tightened until he could barely breathe. He didn't pick it up for 3 days. He barely ate. He didn't shave. He walked through the house she had made warm and bright, and it felt empty again. His home had been revived, and now it was dying with every silent hour. On the 4th day, he saddled his horse and rode to Sarah's grave. Rain soaked him to the bone as he knelt in the mud. I'm sorry, he whispered. I thought staying alone meant staying loyal to you, but all I did was hide. The rain washed down his face, but he didn't move. I lost you, he said, voice shaking. And now I've lost her, because I'm scared. His breath hitched. I don't want to be scared anymore. Not of living, not of loving. No voice answered, but something inside him broke free, like ice melting after a long winter. That evening, old Moses found him in the barn, drunk on cheap whiskey and grief. Boy, Moses said, you're a damn fool. Go away, Samuel muttered. No, Moses crossed his arms. That woman looked at you like you hung the moon. And you let her walk. Sarah would have boxed your ears for that. Don't talk about Sarah. I'll talk about her all I want. She'd say the same thing I'm saying. Get your head straight and fix what you broke. Samuel sank down on a hay bale. I failed her. I failed both of them. Moses snorted. You fail when you stop trying. You still got breath in your lungs. Fix it. The words struck deep. Samuel set the bottle down. Hard. He was done hiding. Clara, meanwhile, stayed in a small room at the boarding house. Mrs. Hartwell had offered her a job as a companion to an elderly widow. Respectable work. Safe work. But it felt like another cage built from pity. A stagecoach ticket to Philadelphia sat on her nightstand. A new start. A lonely one. Clara stared out the window at Bitterroot's Main Street. Families walked together. Shopkeepers swept their steps. Life continued around her, but none of it felt like hers. Her scars caught the light. Her reflection stared back. Strong. Tired. Alone. She didn't want to run anymore. She didn't want to live smaller than the life she'd fought for. She tore the ticket in half. And then she heard the church bells. Samuel rode into town with the wind at his back, clean-shaven, clothes pressed, eyes clear. Clara saw him ride past from her window and turned away, her heart cracking again. She thought he was going to church like always. He wasn't. He was going to tell the truth. The church was full when Samuel pushed the doors open. Reverend Thompson stopped mid-sermon. 50 heads turned. Clara stood in the back pew, breath caught in her chest. Samuel removed his hat, walked down the center aisle toward her. His boots echoed on the wooden floor. Every eye followed him. Mrs. Hartwell froze. Marcus Dalton smirked. Samuel stopped at Clara's pew. Clara Bennett Crawford, he said, voice steady. I've been a coward and a fool. Clara's lips parted in shock. I was scared to love again, scared I'd fail you like I failed Sarah. He swallowed hard. But I don't regret one day since you stepped off that stage. You made my house a home. You made me want to live again. And I let fear take you away. Silence filled the church. No one moved. I'm not asking out of duty or pity. I'm asking because I love you. Come home. Dalton stood with a snort. Crawford, you humiliating yourself over a... Samuel didn't look at him. For the woman I love, he said, judge her scars? Judge mine first. Clara trembled. Tears filled her eyes. "You hurt me." "I know," he whispered. "Worst mistake I ever made." She stepped into the aisle close enough to touch. "I'm scared, Samuel." "Me too," he said softly. "So we'll be scared together." He held out his hand. Clara took it, her scarred side facing the whole congregation. Gasps rose, shock. Then, slowly, the sound of clapping. Old Moses started it. A few joined. Then more. Then, almost all. Samuel led Clara out the doors into the warm spring sunlight. He lifted her gently into the wagon. "Let's go home," he said. This time, the word home meant both of them. June brought wildflowers across the ranch. The garden bloomed in bright colors. The house smelled like baking bread and fresh coffee. At night they sat on the porch under the stars, shoulders touching, rocking chairs side by side. They slept in the same bed now. Not rushed, not forced. Just two people learning each other's hearts with patience and tenderness. One evening, Clara leaned her head on Samuel's shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Not sending me back?" Samuel smiled, his hand warm over hers. "I regret every day I wasted being afraid," he said. "But you were worth all the waiting." Clara kissed him, slow and deep. When they pulled apart, the fireflies danced over their garden. Spring had come late to Crawford Ranch, but when it finally arrived, it stayed.